Good afternoon, everybody. I'm your host, Supreme Litigant, and I'd like to welcome everybody back to Smart Loc TV. Before we begin, y'all already know the routine. If you haven't already, please hit that like button, hit that subscription button, and turn that notification bell on. I'll give y'all a few seconds to do that. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to attempt to give y'all a general understanding of territorial jurisdiction. I mean, the name territory or territorial should really be self-explanatory as to what territorial jurisdiction actually is. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using the post office, the U.S. Post Office, and I'm going to be using some cities and towns, just some case law, just to cite this stuff to see if I can try to draw you a picture, and then I'm going to use a map in Georgia and try to explain it to you. All right, so right here, this case right here, there's the case if you want to go and read it. I'm going to give you this case citation. I'm going to read this case citation right quick. Congress created the United States Postal Service to carry out the duties regarding the delivery of mail. Okay, so after reading that, we can reasonably conclude that Congress created the United States Postal Service. Let's go to the next one. So right here we see, here's a case citation right here. I'm going to read this one. Cities are territorial subdivisions of the state, created as municipal corporations for the administration of government. They are administrative agencies. All right, that's what they are. So let me see. I'm trying to find the right words to use. Right here. This one's pretty good, right? I think I'm gonna go and read this case. But let me read you the citation out of it first. All right. The nature and the extent of territorial municipal powers is analyzed in 37 M jurisprudence municipal corporation. And I'm gonna go and click on that case, not right now, but I'm trying to get y'all to understand that all legislation is territorial. So let me see right here. See if I can find some cases right here. Here it is right here. This is one case right here. All legislation is prima facie territorial. That means federal and state statutes. That means your state legislatures, when they are creating or when they are drafting these so-called laws, these laws are only applicable in territories of the state legislature. If Congress enacts so-called laws, then Congress's laws are only applicable or only apply over their territories. All right. Pay attention now. Again, I'm going to reiterate this one more time. Where it is. Let me see if I can find it right here. Cities are territorial subdivisions of the state. A city is a territory. A county is a territory. Okay? Any administrative agency, whether it be created by the state or the federal government, is a territory. In other words, what I'm trying to get you to understand is these administrative agencies, the legislatures, federal and state, are exercising territorial jurisdiction over these agencies. Now, let me give you some examples. Let me show you something using this map right here. All right. This is Nebraska. Okay. Say you're you're traveling down a road, a public highway on a street in so-called Nebraska. Okay. And you're getting ready to go to the post office. All right. So you turn off the street and you turn into the property of the post office. All right. When you turn off of that street onto the property of that post office, you are no longer in Nebraska. You are in the United States. That's where you at. You're in the United States. Any place where federal law is applicable is the United States, so-called law anyway. Applicable is the United States. Not the United States. Congress exercises territorial jurisdiction over all U.S. post offices, no matter where they are. Despite the fact that Congress is in the District of Columbia. All right. Congress also exercises territorial jurisdiction over all U.S. district courts, U.S. courts of appeals, and the U.S. Supreme Court. The U.S. Supreme Court, that court belongs to Congress. They created it. All right. They created that. There are two Supreme Courts. All right. There's two. One of them is an inferior court, and the other one is actually a Supreme Court. All right. What else? All U.S. Border Patrols, the Veterans Affairs, the Department of Justice. I don't care where it is. Congress is exercising territorial jurisdiction over that particular administrative agency in a particular geographical area, despite the fact that that is not the United States. So, in other words, what I mean is when you step off of a public street let's say you're in Georgia, you're in Atlanta, Georgia, or something, you go into a post office, and you step off of that street, you're no longer in Georgia anymore. You're in the United States. Let's say you go into a U.S. District Court in Georgia. As soon as you step off of that street onto the property of that state house, of that so-called courthouse, you are no longer in Georgia. You are in the United States. I don't care if it looks like Georgia. It's not Georgia. That is the United States. Because if you do anything to anybody in there, the feds coming to get you. What else? Let me see if I can give you some examples. Okay, so say you are in, let's say you're in Florida, but you own property in South Carolina. Okay, you have territorial jurisdiction over all of those houses that you own. It's yours. Which means, generally speaking, you can exercise plenary power over that property, just like Congress does over all of their administrative agencies. All right. Now let me explain to you how territorial jurisdiction works. Let me see if this is it. Nah, this one ain't it. Right here. Let me go back down. I'm going to read this to y'all one more time. I got to get y'all to understand this. All legislation is prima facie territorial. All right. Let's go here. Where is that? Right here. In a strict sense, the term municipal corporation may apply only to incorporated cities, towns, and villages having subordinate and local powers of legislation. What this is telling you is, without telling you, is that statutes are only applicable to incorporated cities, towns, and villages having subordinate and local powers of legislation. The reason for this is the legislature, whether they be state or so-called federal, they do not own that land. All right, so they can't come in and take the land and use it for whatever purpose that they want. They can't do that because you can't take private property and use it for public purposes without just compensation. You can't do that. Now, they can negotiate with the so-called state, the United States, and the state can negotiate a deal, so where they can get the land and use or something like that. They can do that. All right, but let me explain it to you how this territorial jurisdiction works. All right, so we're going to say everything that I marked black using this thing right here is an unincorporated county, which means everything with all of the land which is in that allegedly unincorporated county is outside the corporate territorial jurisdiction of the legislature. So we're going to say this one. We're going to mark all of this right here. All of this. We're going to do all of this. All of these counties right here. All right. And we're going to say everything else is incorporated. In other words, all of these counties are incorporated. So all of the counties that are incorporated, in other words, the people who own the land at the time voluntarily made themselves, or in other words, voluntarily accepted a charter, a corporate charter from the legislature to form a municipal corporation to use for government purposes. In other words, the people who own the land there are no longer using their land for private purposes. You know what I'm saying? They're using it for public purposes now. They're creating a corporation, and they're going to call this corporation the County of Sumter, the County of Crisp, the County of Lee. All right. They got this corporate charter from the legislature. Everything, all of these counties right here, they've been incorporated. They are municipal corporations, which means that all the statutes that the legislature enacts only, and I mean only, generally speaking now, I'm giving you a general understanding of this stuff, only apply to everything that I did not mark black. That's how territorial jurisdiction works. The reason for this is the legislature does not own the land. They can't just come in and just take your land and use it for governments. It doesn't work like that. Not without giving you some sort of compensation for it or something like that. You know what I'm saying? That's not how it works. It does not work like that. So everything you see up here, this is where statutes would apply. And everything you see right here, this is where statutes would not apply. Now, the people in black right here, I mean, this right here in black, does that mean that these people over here who live outside the corporate territorial jurisdiction of the legislature, does that mean that they can murder, kill, rob, rape, steal people's property, damage people's property? Does that mean that? Hell no, they can't do that. These people are under God's law, common law and equity, and they still can be prosecuted in a court of general jurisdiction for this. And generally speaking, the chances of them being prosecuted in any of these incorporated counties are limited, because they're not subject to the territorial jurisdiction of the legislature. The statutes don't apply. In other words, these people over here are foreign to this jurisdiction, if that makes sense. They have not voluntarily made themselves subject to this jurisdiction, unless it was an implicit acquiescence to that jurisdiction or something like that. That's generally how this stuff works. All right, that's it. That's pretty much it. That's in a nutshell, that is territorial jurisdiction. Let me pause the video, y'all. I'll be right back. All right, y'all. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this short little excerpt. I'm not going to read all of it. And then that's going to be the end of this video, because I'm trying to explain territorial jurisdiction to y'all. All right. So right here, the nature and extent of territorial municipal power is analyzed in 37 American jurisprudence, Municipal Corporations, Section 122, page yada, yada, yada. The primary purpose of a municipal corporation is to contribute toward the welfare, health, happiness, and public interests of the inhabitants of such corporation, and not further the interests of those residing outside its limits. Therefore, the general rule is that municipal corporations have no extra territorial powers, but their jurisdiction ends at the municipal boundaries and cannot, without specific legislative authority, extend beyond their geographical limits. The legislature may, however, confer jurisdiction upon municipal corporations for sanitary and police purposes and for license regulations under the police power over territory contiguous to the corporation. Notice that they keep calling it a corporation. It's an administrative agency, man. It's a corporation too. All right, but what they're doing is they're administering public policy for the legislature for the welfare, health, happiness, and public interests of the inhabitants of such corporation. That's what they're doing. So let me go back here. So I want y'all to keep this in mind, all right? Where is it at? Trying to find it. Give me a second, y'all. Right here. All legislation is prima facie territorial. Let me show y'all that this is a principle, just to let y'all know. You're going to see this everywhere. This is the U.S. Supreme Court. All legislation is prima facie territorial. This is from 1909. I'm not sure how old the oldest case is, but let's go and let me show you that this is a principle, all right? This is from 1925. All legislation is prima facie territorial. All legislation is prima facie territorial. In other words, statutes only apply in territories lawfully acquired by the legislature. That's it. If they lawfully gain, control or whatever you want to call it over this particular property or geographical area or whatever, then they can exercise corporate territorial jurisdiction over that area. The governing principle is that all legislation is prima facie territorial. This is from 1896. This is a principle. If you look at these cases, they're cited all over the country. All legislation is prima facie territorial, and it does not operate beyond the limits of the jurisdiction in which it is enacted. We don't have a democracy. We have a republic. All right, so you are free to leave their corporate territorial jurisdiction whenever you want. That is why they cannot take your property, because you have a right to privacy. You have a right to be let alone under the Fourth Amendment. That's what it means. It means without the government, period, in your business. But you also have a right to change your form of government from a Republican form of government to a democracy if you want. But they can't. But since we have a republic, and the republic respects private rights or individual rights, both of these systems can coexist. But you have to leave. You can't. If you agree with the Republican form of government, you can't force the people in the city and towns and counties and all of that to your Republican form of government. Because that's contrary to the Republican form of government. They have a democracy over there, and you don't want that, so you leave and you go and I can't even get the words out of my mouth. But you go and do your own thing on your own land. Privacy, free, outside of their corporate territorial jurisdiction. You can do that. They're not going to tell you that, but I'm 100% you can do that. I've read the cases on it. Plaintiff, in support of his position, here urges the doctrine that all legislation is prima facie territorial and does not operate beyond the jurisdiction in which it is enacted. And that's generally correct. So again, a city is a territory. They got a corporate charter from the legislature. They voluntarily accepted that charter. The people back then. That's what happened. And if you don't believe me, let me show y'all this, and then I'm gonna end this video. Let's go. Let's get this out the way. Right here. Let's go. Where we at? If you want proof, I'm about to give it to you right here. Go watch all of these videos right here. This one, and this one. Where I'm showing you the case. It's an old case, though. You got to go and read the old cases. They just gonna tell you what it is in the old cases. But that's essentially what is going on. This is why, again, I keep telling people that statutes are not laws. Because if statutes were laws, then they would apply in these unincorporated towns. I'm sorry, in these unincorporated counties in Georgia that I used as an example earlier, and they don't, because they're not laws. It's a form of law. It's just like let me show y'all something. I know I said I was going to end this video, but let me show y'all something. So we're going to go to, let's say, Georgia rules of professional conduct. Okay. All right. So the Georgia rules of professional conduct are not laws. All right. They don't apply to me and you unless we go to Georgia and we get our so-called law license or whatever, and we voluntarily become members of the State Bar of Georgia. Then these rules, although they are not laws, they then have the force and effect of law on us because we voluntarily made ourselves subject to them. So if you violate any of these rules and somebody files a complaint against you with the State Bar of Georgia, you're going to get an administrative hearing, because the Bar Association is an administrative agency. It's going to look and it's going to function just like a court. So in other words, they are punishing one of their members for breaching one of their bylaws or one of their rules, if that makes sense. Think of ordinances as laws for members of the corporation. Same thing goes for statutes, because that's essentially what it is. That's all it is, because they're all corporations. And if they're all corporations and you're not a member of this corporation, then how do these statutes lawfully apply to you? They're not going to tell y'all this stuff. They are not going to tell you this stuff. All legislation is territorial. So in other words, they must be exercising. You can reasonably conclude that they are exercising their corporate territorial jurisdiction over your person. They're saying you're a res, you're a thing, you're a subject, you're a citizen, or something like that. But all of those are euphemisms for members. They have to be, because all legislation is territorial and they are all corporations. So I'm just drawing reasonable conclusions based off everything that I know. But anyway, that will be the end of this video. The Supreme Litigant is out. Peace.